Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whether you're watching the replay or you're watching live. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Red Flag series, Subtle Blindness. Today, we're diving into a crucial topic: love bombing and controlling behavior in relationships. With us is Reba Pendleton. She is a licensed clinical social worker and therapist specializing in trauma. Through a blend of clinical expertise and compassionate care in community mental health and private practice, Reba helps individuals move from mental illness to mental health, equipping them with tools needed to reclaim their well being. Reba has received a bachelor's and a master's degree in social work, both from Spalding University. A therapist for 9 years, speaker, educator, delivers engaging and insightful talks on trauma, mental health, and resilience, empowering audiences to foster healing in both personal and professional spaces. Whether working one on one with clients or addressing large groups, her mission is clear: to educate, equip, and empower individuals on their journey towards mental wellness. Help me welcome to the platform on today, Reba Pendleton. Thank
Hey, how are you, Gabby?
I'm well, thank you. It is such a pleasure and an honor to have you with me on today. And so we are discussing um, love bomb
Oh, wow.
and over controlling behaviors in relationships today. And so let's start with the basics. What exactly is love bombing? Um,
Okay.
we hear these terms circulating throughout social media, um, and everybody they'll Google and ask Alexa just about anything. And so, from a clinical perspective, can you define for us what is love bombing and why does it happen?
Okay. So it's funny. Love bombing is nothing new. It's not a new term. The term love bombing originated in the 1970s and was first used by the Unification Church, also known as the Moonies. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm very familiar
Yeah,
with.
the
Mhm,
people in the
mhm,
airport that would shave their head and wore the
yeah.
togas, I would call it. So it originated with them. It's a religious group, and it was founded by Sun Moon, and the group used love bombing as a recruiting tactic,
Ah,
showering new members with excessive affection, praise, and attention to make them feel special and welcome. This created a strong emotional attachment, making it harder for the recruits to leave or to question the group's motives. So,
mm,
over time, psychologists, experts, on abusive relationships adopted this term to describe similar manipulative behaviors in romantic relationships, cult, and even high controlled organizations. So, love
my,
bombing is just not for romantic relationships, but cults and high controlling organization. So it's widely known as a red flag for toxic relationships and for narcissist abuse.
mhm, mhm.
So what is love bombing? So I had to kind of look up a combination of um, definitions. So this is how we're just gonna roll with it. Okay.
Roll with
So,
it.
so love bombing is a manipulative tactic where someone, and I would even put in an organization, right? But we're going to deal with the someone because we're talking about relationships. Someone overwhelms another person with excessive attention, affection, and gifts to gain control or influence over them. It often occurs in the early stages of a relationship and can feel like an intense whirlwind romance.
Right.
However, once the target becomes emotionally dependent, The love bomber may shift to more controlling or abusive behaviors, such as gaslighting, isolation, and emotional withdrawal. Love bombing is commonly associated with narcissistic or abusive relationships, but also can occur in cults, workplaces, and even friendships. Signs include constant compliments, rapid declarations of love, pressure of commitment quickly, and the over the top intensity that feels too good to be true.
So then if they say if it's too good to be true, then it's too good to be
To
true.
be true.
So then, because when you're starting off, like just about all, especially romantic relationships,
Mhm,
they always start off because everybody's putting their best foot forward. They want to, really make it work, right? And
mhm.
so everybody's kind, everybody's nice, right? Um, but how can one tell the difference between love bombing and just genuine, regular affection? Like, where is the dividing line?
I think that comes into what a lot of people don't know how to do is communicate, like talk
Mm,
one on one, right? You can talk to someone, but you really don't want to be vulnerable with them, right? You don't want to let your guard down because of past hurts, past
mhm,
whatever experiences, right? And so, one of the things for you to tell the difference is to know how to ask those questions. And also, you got to be secure in yourself. It's like, we got to go back to why are you really in this relationship?
mhm.
And so, it goes back to you as a person, as an individual.
So then what questions should be asked? I mean, because at the very beginning, like, you don't want to, some people don't want to ask too many questions, thinking that, it might push them away or make the person think that they're cray cray. So, like, what does that look like,
Right, right. And it's like I think it's a dying art because we don't do it anymore because of social media,
Right.
right? And because of COVID. I think it's called building rapport.
Mm.
It's like it builds over time. It's like, hey, how you doing? How's this? How that? And it goes back to you and what your ulterior motives are.
So if they are doing too much too fast, then that's
Oh,
generally uh, a red
caution.
flag.
Uh,
So, for example, they start buying expensive gifts and you less than 30 days in.
mm-mm. That's a red flag right there because that's already you're seeing the manipulation and the control because then okay if they're giving you expensive um gifts, if they're giving you the latest Louis Vuitton, if they're giving you the latest Coach or the Duenenberg, or then okay, then they got you because that's the
Mhm,
materialistic, that's the
mhm.
control. It's like okay, I can control you with money, but if you're secure in yourself, you'll be like, oh, thank you, but that's too much.
Exactly, exactly. So
Mhm,
then, as a trauma specialist,
mhm.
how does childhood trauma, physical abuse, and sexual abuse? Because a lot of times, um, some people have experienced some level of whether it was sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse from their parents. How does that play into um, this whole love bombing and people actually like not being able to identify that this is happening to them?
I think one of the things is the age, the developmental stage of when it happened. Because usually the clients that I work with, a lot of their um, their trauma started back at the age of 6 and 7. And so
Mm,
at the age of 6 and 7, you are a child, right?
right.
You depend on your parent, your guardian to protect you, to nourish you, to show you what it means to have a healthy relationship,
Hmm.
but because they showed you it in a different way, you don't know the right from the wrong. so
Mm.
to speak. And so when they get older and they hear that this is not correct, that this is abnormal behavior, and if they try to say something about it, then the parent or the guardian or the one who was showing them the affection begins to turn on them, and then they start inwardly keeping all of that in. They keep
Okay.
holding it in, but it manifests in a different way. It comes out in behavior, or it comes out in sleep, it comes out in anxiety, it comes out in a whole other ways.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um, is love bombing always manipulative or can it be unintentional?
Hmm. Again, it depends on the motive behind it. I don't believe for some people it is not being manipulative, but it is a thing that I want to hold on to you. I don't want to
Mhm,
lose you.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
But then when a life stressor happens,
mhm,
then they become unraveled because they haven't dealt with the work within themselves.
mhm.
Then they are probably self sabotage, and then you'll be lost because you've been ghosted. And then here we go again with hurt.
Right. Okay. So then the cycle repeats. It
Mm,
kind of reminds me of the last relationship that I was in, even if you could call it that. But um,
okay.
when I first met them, it was in 2014.
Hmm.
Met online, right?
Okay.
Um, and I can recall when we first started talking,
Hmm.
um, general conversation, very respectful, nothing major.
Hmm.
Um, but I recall it was about maybe 45 days in,
Hmm.
and they were looking for a dentist and an optometrist, and
Hmm.
the type of person that they were, they had to go physically to the place, look at
Hmm.
it, check it out, get a vibe for it. Like for me, that was a little weird, but like, okay, that's your thing, whatever.
Hmm.
And I remember being in the parking lot,
Hmm.
walking back to the car, and they made the statement, "I'll never leave you. You'll have to leave me." And I said, "That don't sound right." But for whatever reason, I kept moving forward.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I was about 6 months in, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And I began to notice some other things, and I'm like, this ain't right." But
Hmm.
they were so doting and so kind and
Hmm.
accommodating and,
Hmm.
um, you know when you're young, the old women used to say, "Don't be calling that boy all that time. If they really want you, if they into you, they gonna call you, right?" And so I never had to call.
Oh Lord. Okay.
Like they always called. They was always on my phone,
Mm.
always present. But then there was some other little things that was like, something wrong with you. And I kept going.
Mhm. Mhm.
For
Mhm.
7 years, I kept going. 7
Well,
years.
bless God, there was an experience. Okay.
It was an experience. And
Mhm.
so, and I often tell people, there was a moment in time where I was upset and angry with myself.
Mhm.
But then I realized, you know what? This had to happen. Like I needed this information, um, one, to help me, and then also to be doing what I'm doing right now, helping somebody else identify it. And I think back to the whole time I'm in therapy.
Oh, did you not trust your therapist with this?
We I don't know if I divulged all of it.
Oh.
And so then that's something that's key because if you don't tell the therapist everything,
Mhm.
then they
Mhm.
can't put all the pieces together, right?
Right.
Um, and so then that kind of goes back to the individual. But as we're looking to identify, right?
Okay.
That was
Okay.
a clear red flag. and I ignored. It was
Yeah,
weird because
yeah.
as soon as I heard it, I was like, what?" And then I found myself 2 years after this
Uh-huh.
cohabitating.
Ah. But you
Now,
knew it was a clear red flag, but 2
but
years
I
later,
proceeded,
you
A-
proceeded.
and
Okay.
2 years later,
Uh-huh.
well, let me pause.
Mhm,
1 year in, there
mhm,
was a situation that happened. They had to have a medical procedure. They were going to the hospital,
mhm,
um, but they didn't want me there. And I was like, that's odd. Okay. So I was gonna take off work and be at the
mhm.
hospital, be a support. If
Of
you
course.
are coupling, that's what
Yeah.
couples do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and so he was kind of against it. The night before, he was like, "Okay, pick me up," blah blah blah, take me to all the things. 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe even earlier. I think it was my like 4. He
Mhm,
calls and says, "Don't worry, don't come. I'm already here." Er, Okay. So that said to me, like, yeah, you not it. It's a wrap. Like, I'm trying to do and
mhm,
develop something to do life forever,
mhm.
and you're not there. Like, so you don't want what I want. So let's just call it a wrap, right? And so I ended it. And we
Mhm.
had established like a routine and a behavior. And I had come to learn that they had a routine that they had to maintain because they had grown up in um, foster care and group homes. And so they were used to this
Oh.
regimented type lifestyle.
Mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and so, of course, then it was, let's talk, let's reconcile. I'm sorry. Like, I do want what you want, blah, blah, blah. And within 2 weeks, we back to the same rhythm.
mm,
And then 2 years later,
mhm,
I find myself cohabitating
mhm.
and I'm in my room, he in his room. There was never any intimacy in that way.
Okay.
Um, which even for like, initially you think, oh, good, I'm saved. He don't want that. Good, I'm good.
Uh,
But then you start to think something wrong with you.
uh-uh.
Because I don't know no uh uh male adult that don't try.
Uh,
I'm 100, like they'll at
all
least
right.
attempt and wait for you to say no and see if you really gonna maintain your boundaries and your guards. But in that time frame and that cohabitation lasted for 5 years. And so it took me back to um the initial "I'm not gonna leave you, you gotta leave me" statement. Because when it
Mm,
was over and I said bye, you gotta go,
mhm.
I ended up having to file an eviction. And even after the eviction was filed, they were making no attempts to leave. So then my question to you is, are there certain personality traits or past experiences that make someone more vulnerable to love bombing than others?
Mm. I think it is those who have low self-esteem, low
Mhm,
confidence, um, who are not comfortable in their own skin.
mhm,
They're
mhm,
not comfortable with themselves. They are um, in this false expectation of a societal rule that
mhm,
no one can match.
mm,
Like, I am this age and I should have a relationship. I should be stable in my career. I should be ready to get married. I should be settling down. Yeah, no, that's not realistic.
yeah.
In some things, and I think our society is like you let the person be them, and it goes back to you. It goes back to what do you want out of relationship?
Yeah. I would have to agree with that because when we met, I was 365 pounds. Yeah, I know,
Oh,
huh, Miss Reba?
girl,
Yeah.
look, you done slimmed down, sis. Go on
Yeah.
with it now. Okay.
And so it was like, oh, somebody that wants me for me. And mind you, I'm in my early 40s.
Mhm,
I had intentionally not dated while I was raising my children. By
mhm,
this time, my daughter was 2 months away from graduation.
mhm, mhm,
So then I decided, okay, I'm gonna open myself up to be available for a relationship.
mhm.
Um and so I would have to say there was this level of um low self-esteem that was attached to this, because here's this person that's showing me this affection, and they're kind and accommodating, and um they would they would cook and then serve it and then even clean it up. Like, they would do all these. It was
Cater
nice.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
wonderful,
Mhm,
until it ain't so wonderful. Ah, because everything ain't all it's cracked up to be.
mhm.
Um, so is it possible for them to change if they exhibit these behaviors? Because we always think that they can change. And we believe God can change a man. He can change a hoe into a housewife. He can change a pimp and a player to a pastor and a preacher. And while these things are true and they're factual, and God does change people, but when these uh, behaviors exhibit themselves, especially like the narcissistic behaviors, can they change that?
Yes, they can. I believe they can change it. Since added God, put God in it. The thing of it is they got to die daily, right? They have
Mm,
to release the hurt and the pain and the trauma and be like, I'm not in control of this. And
mm,
they got to get healed from what they got hurt from in their childhood.
absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
hurt people, right? I hate,
Absolutely.
cliches, but sometimes we have to use it in this manner. Um, Anyone is able to change if they're willing to change, but you have to do the work. You have to die. Um, Especially if you are a believer, you have to die to yourself because whatever experience you are going through, it's not really just for you, but it's for someone else to help you get through.
Mhm.
Um, but again, everyone has this falsehood that they should be perfect, and no one is perfect.
Nobody.
Nobody is perfect. So, in regards to that, so anyone can change if they put their mind to it and do the work and die.
Right.
Oops, sorry. Unalive. We're on the
Oh, no,
stream.
yeah, we on we
Unalive. Ooh,
unalive.
unalive. Sorry.
We
Whoopsie.
unalive and vote.
Unalive.
Um, um, so then, are there long-term effects to the person that has experienced this love bombing? And if so, what does that look like?
Oh, the long-term effects. It'd be definitely lack of trust. They would not know how to really accept the one God is sending them. The true love of
Mm,
God, they would not be able to handle that. Um, my apostle, my spiritual father, Apostle Dr. Christopher Montgomery said that is that some people cannot handle the true love of God when he sends it to them in relationships because of the hurt that they've had over time.
mhm.
Um, the long term effects if also could be poor communication. You'll really not understand what this person is trying to communicate because their voice has never been heard, right?
Yeah.
And so they will not have a sense of themselves. They will be like a zombie
Chameleon?
walking around.
Zombie, okay.
I was getting
So
ready
that
to say it, but I didn't.
the chameleon
No, no,
becoming
no, not
whatever
the
the other person wants them to be instead of being their true authentic self.
yeah, because a chameleon, I mean, you just like no, that is no, you're just changing colors. You're still the same on the inside.
Okay. So then that kind of leads me to the over controlling behavior, right?
Mhm.
Um, because there are some, in male female relationships, men tend to be domineering. But at what point do you recognize that normal from the abnormal?
Yeah. And women can be domineering too. I'm not
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
not
Let me go both ways. I'm with you.
yeah, I'm like they can. I think it becomes when they start to dictate and make you feel guilty, make you feel
Mm,
afraid of your decision, make you always second guess yourself. You
mm,
have
yeah,
to have that. If you're not securing yourself, you're going to fall prey to it. You're going to be like, "Oh, well, I thought this looked good." No, it makes you look fat. Don't wear that. But he'll see someone else wearing it and compliment them, but then you be looking like, "What? What?" Yeah, no.
yeah. Because that's when that kind of gaslighting comes into play. Um, and then they'll say something, and then a day later they'll claim they didn't say that, or
Yes.
that ain't how they said it. And you
Yes.
like, I
Yes.
ain't crazy. I know
Yeah.
what you said.
Yeah.
Uh,
But it always has you in a place where you're unbalanced.
mm-hmm,
You're not
mm-hmm,
stable.
mm-hmm.
And that is not what a relationship should be. It should be mutual respect.
Absolutely. So, what are the first steps someone can take to recognize and escape these types of relationships, whether they identify, oh, this looks like love bombing, or controlling relationships? Like, what are the first steps that they need to take?
The first steps is to look for the signs and the behaviors, right? If there's always like if they're isolating you from your family and friends,
Mm,
if they're discouraging you or forbidding you for being or seeing certain people or talking negatively about your support system who's always been there for you.
mm-hmm.
If there's an invasion of privacy, if they're always checking your phone and you're not checking their phone,
Oh, this is good. This is real good.
they're making decisions for you. They're telling you what to wear, what to eat. They're overruling your choices. Like I said, wearing a certain attire. They are controlling you by your emotions. Like if you really love me, you wouldn't do this. If you
Mm,
really do, you know what I'm saying? They're
mhm,
twisting the situation to make you question your own judgment. They're also excessive jealous, being jealous or
mhm,
possessive, making sure that you feel guilty not spending enough time with them.
mhm. This is good. It kind of reminds me. I couldn't go. I would be gone, and they wouldn't bother me. They wouldn't say I couldn't go, but they'd be ringing my phone every 5 minutes. Don't want nothing, but they call me. Initially, at the beginning, you think, oh, he's thinking about me, until you realize what is really happening. Um, I grew up surrounded by clinicians.
Mhm,
My sister is a social worker, a licensed social worker. She's a retired school counselor. She went back to school for marriage and family therapy.
mhm,
Um, my present pastor is a LCSW. Um, my previous pastor was a licensed clinical psychologists. I have several friends that are LCSWs and licensed social work. I'm surrounded
Uh-huh.
by them.
Mhm.
And they spend some time as a what is like a BST, behavioral something tech. And so now I got folks that diagnose and all the things, but they would try to tell me that they were wrong and he was right. And I'm like, no, dude. And so they would get angry because I wouldn't accept what they said. I'm like, no, why would you don't even have a degree, sir? Why would I take your word over my people? And that would frustrate them to no end. Um, and so needless to say, it didn't go far because I wasn't bowing.
Yeah.
I was staying,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
wasn't complying. I was
Yeah.
staying, but they still
Uh-huh.
weren't quite getting the
Uh-huh.
full effect of whatever their motive was at the time.
Mm.
And so, and they wouldn't isolate, but they wouldn't like necessarily go to certain places. Or if
Mhm.
they would be real awkward. Like they have to bring it, like they would eat before we get there, or like it was these little nuances and idiosyncrasies that just didn't make sense. And because my family and friends loved me,
Mhm.
they accepted him,
Mhm.
and he thought they just loved him. Like, no, you're accepted because of me. It has nothing to do with you. They really think I should kick you to the curb and should have left you a long time ago.
Oh. 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 Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And so there comes a point too, like when your circle says, yeah, this or no.
Mhm.
And I realized like part of me stayed longer because my godmother and her sister, my aunt, who was my former pastor,
Mhm.
and was raised with them from about the time I was 16 on up. And so mom was like, yeah, no, look for another. And I'm like, mama, you just don't like nobody. Or she'd be like, he's shifty eyed, something ain't right. And so part of me stayed longer because I was trying to prove him wrong.
Oh. Okay. So all right. So that we come into the meat of why you stayed so long.
Why I stayed so long. And then I'll never forget, we had a visiting prophet in town.
Mhm.
He was preaching in service.
Mhm.
And this was at the very beginning of the relationship. And I'm talking like less than 60 days. So between 30 and the 45th day or so.
Okay.
And he was up preaching Sunday morning. I'm sitting on the front row. And mid sentence, he stopped, turned, looked at me, and said, marry that man. Do you hear me? Marry that man. He said it 4 times. He didn't stop saying it until I said, okay. And I was like, okay. Not long after that, my current pastor now, Apostle Regina Rhodes, came to me one Sunday night and she says, the Lord has released you for a relationship and you have just entered marriage 101. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this the one. The Lord then sent confirmation. And I remember the first time that we met in person, um, we had a date scheduled on a Tuesday night after I got off work. But I was leaving work. I can visually tell you what I was wearing, where I
Mhm.
was at. I came out
Mhm.
of the parking garage from where I worked. I'm at the stoplight and I get this overwhelming sense of peace
Mhm.
because I'm praying about it. Like I'm seeking God about it the whole time, right?
Okay.
Um, and I get this overwhelming sense of peace, and I'm like, I'm gonna meet him today. And I went to their house. Now I would never do that. I don't even know you. Like you could be anything. Look,
Mhm. Mhm.
serial killer, anything. But because I felt this sense of peace, again, I moved forward. And while there, he was the perfect gentleman. We sat, watched what Shark Tank, talked about Shark Tank, which at that time was like his favorite go-to show. Um, and I didn't stay long. And then I, said my goodbyes and got in my car and went on my way. And we still met the next day. And like from that moment, like we talked every day. There was like not a day that went by that we didn't communicate. Until, I went on a 3-day fast, again, trying to seek the Lord, right? Yet there's all these red flags. And so every time I got ready to cut it off, I would hear the preacher's voice, marry that man. And I'm like, okay. So I held on a little longer until I got to the place. And 2020 was a good year. Because 2020, I was like, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was done.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
now all of a sudden now they want to do the couples counseling. They want to do all the things. But of course, they didn't. And so now it's about a year later. And now it has started to impact me mentally and emotionally to the point like I had levels of anxiety that I had never experienced in my life. Like
Mhm.
just driving became a chore. If a car was moving over, I was panicking like they were getting ready to hit me, and it was just normal.
Mhm.
It
Changing
became
lanes.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um so I was on Wellbutrin and the whole nine. And the Lord began to send people to intercede on my behalf.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um One of my pastor friends called. He said, "The Lord has been waking me up at 3 a.m. to intercede for you."
Mhm.
And then I went to church, and my son's godmother, Pastor Betty, she looked
Mhm.
at me and she says, "Little girl, why am I praying so intensely for you?" And I just began to cry and break. But when I
Mhm.
woke up that next morning,
Mhm. Mhm.
I had to come to a resolve.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I had done some foolish stuff. Like there were businesses involved, a nonprofit involved. Like it was, yeah, dumb. Um,
It's an
and
experience. It was an experience. It
it
was an
was.
experience. Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And I came to the place where I said, let the chips fall where they may. Take all the money. I don't really care.
Mhm.
I'll dissolve it.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's what I did. I dissolved the LLC and resigned from the nonprofit. And just like I wrote did file the application for that, I did another 501(c)(3) and had it about 2 months later. So it's like, one monkey don't stop a show. Um, and I was able to release it. And I had my friends, we talked for years. And they were like, and they would listen. They listened and they didn't judge. And they just knew that when I got to the place where I was done, I was done.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it was an ugly separation. It I tried to make it amicable, but it didn't happen.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm happy to say like that was an experience. There were
Mhm.
some things that I learned in that experience, and
Mhm.
even um to the credit of Apostle Regina, it truly was uh a marriage 101 class, because there was things that I learned in that season that I
Mhm.
would have not known to even think about, ask about, prepare for
Mhm. Mhm.
until I had this experience.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Mhm.
what what final words do you have for the people?
Oh wow.
Some closing
There's
takeaways.
yeah, there's a lot. Your story is unique for you, but it's not unique for our culture, right?
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for my apostle mom, Apostle Angelica Montgomery, and her new book, Sin of a Woman. I think that would help some of the women and even the men regarding love bombing. in regards to that. Um, but you have to know yourself. You have to love yourself in a way that's not arrogant,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to know your self worth so you can love you to kind of safeguard against um, the love bombing because, yeah, it's too good to be true, but also pace yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the relationship, ask those questions, have those hard conversations at times, but build that rapport. Um, you know, that's what I would definitely say in regards to that bit. You have to know yourself um, and know your self worth, love yourself, um, and just really use sound, wise counsel. Because,
Yes.
while you were speaking, I'm like, oh, where was the discernment in all of this? And it's like, okay, let me pull out of there. But where was the discernment and what was it that you were seeking to fulfill that you could fulfill yourself and not through your experience, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Um, where can listeners find resources or seek professional help?
Mm.
And where can our audience follow you or learn more about your work?
Oh, um, they can go to, if they want to do, there's a couple of free love bombing assessments that are free, that's online. And they are at Psychology Today and then also at theattachmentproject.com. And those are free assessments you can do online. It takes about 20-30 minutes at tops. And it can tell you what your love type is or your
Mm,
love attachment is.
okay.
Um, and it could also show you if you're like in a current relationship, if there are signs of love bombing that are happening there.
Okay.
Um, you, people can find me on Psychology Today. They can, oh, you got my little flyer out. Thank you.
You're
You can
welcome.
find me on Psychology Today. You can also find me on Therapy for Black Girls. You can find me on Facebook. Elohim Counseling Center has a page on Facebook. And you can also follow me on, I am getting my Instagram up for Elohim Counseling Center as well. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for your expertise, your wisdom, your knowledge. It has been a pleasure talking with you on today. There's some great takeaways. If the women were listening, they got school today. So we thank you for educating us and helping us come to a place of mental wellness. Amen.
well,
Um, yes, ma'am.
well, I was going to say thank you, Apostle Gabby, for having me. Since you have a wealth of people that you could have came on to your podcast, I just say thank you for this opportunity just to talk a little bit.
Absolutely. I like I said, I have thoroughly enjoyed you. This was practical, it was needed. And above all else, it was healing. Amen. On next month, April 13th at 1 o'clock, we'll be talking about social isolation, all to myself with therapist Lynette Johnson. And we're going to be looking at what does it look like and how do you know and how do you put a stop to it when they're trying to keep you from your family and your friends.
All
And so
right.
until next time, this is Healing Broken Wings Ministries, and we'll talk to you next month.